This week, we were all urged to become counter-terrorism citizens. And while I'd urge you to go to the phone instantly and share with authorities any concerns you have about any suspicious behaviour, am I the only one to question this scheme's worth? A brief look at the case of Ahmed Hassan, the Parsons Green tube bomber, whose murderous intent was only foiled due to his blessed utter incompetence, is enough to cause concern. Vile Hassan arrived in this country aged 16, hiding in the back of a truck. He'd been orphaned by the war in Iraq. Shortly after his arrival, he told Home Office officials he'd been recruited by the Islamic State group and had been trained to kill. He was referred to the Anti-Terror Prevent programme, but after just a week was judged, quotes, no cause for concern. Mercifully, no one was killed by his makeshift bomb, though 30 people were injured. Now, if we can't pick up someone like Hassan, what is the point of an initiative like this? If police get tip-offs, they have to act on them.
Nick, this is such an important area, and that we are living in a world and in a country where sadly things are getting more and more dangerous. And what's the irony of it all? Since Theresa May became Home Secretary in 2010, what has happened to our police force? While the world has got more and more dangerous, we've cut our police force. The funding has been cut by almost 20%. The number of police... absolutely. And where it should be increasing to cope with the problems we have. What about the Bobby on the street, visible policing, which has always been the number of police stations that have been shut down, including my local police station.
And mine, yeah.
Neighbourhood policing, which is so important. That's where they pick up information. Yeah. That's where they hear things from the people on the street. That's when they spot things, has been cut. Over 20,000 our police force have been cut. And on top of that, armed policing has gone down by over 1,000 when armed policing should be increased. Sadly, this week, we're remembering what happened at Westminster. I was trapped in there for the hours and hours, and sadly, PC Keith Palmer died trying to protect us.
As did other innocent citizens.
And other citizens were killed that day. And armed policing is required more than ever. If there were armed guards at that place, if he was armed, the terrorists would have died, not PC Keith Palmer. So I think we have been negligent as a country, negligent in terms of cutting our police force. And that is the core problem over here. Yes, of course, the public have got to be vigilant, no question about it. And what the police say is about 20% of what is reported by suspicious people being suspicious is actually turns out to be something genuinely dangerous. So I'm all for that, but the core problem is we've cut our police force. That's negligent.
I completely disagree with you. Sorry, I am trying to
disagreeing with me again.
Yeah, I am trying to find something to agree with you on. I don't think that we're going to stop terrorism by having bobbies on the street. I don't. Where I'm from, you have something called a grasser, and if you're seen talking to a bobby on the beat about the bloke down the road, it's probably not going to end very well. So actually, I applaud...
People are brave and they do it. Believe you me, they get so much... Do you know how much most crimes, most homicide is solved through information, you get on the ground?
I applaud...
If you see someone buying enormous amounts of chemicals or hiring a truck, that's not a grass, is it?
No, of course not, but they're not going to. I completely applaud these mechanisms for people, so I also disagree with you. Because I think that we should be vigilant citizens. I think that we should be helping the police in their thing. And actually, I think that what we need is these prevent strategies, the mechanisms to report that I've seen this person doing something a bit dodgy, whether it's buying all this stuff or doing this stuff.
But we didn't work with the Parsons Green bloke. If we find someone like that, we've got to take action.
What fills me with absolute dread is the amount of people who are deemed to be a risk, a terrorism risk, that are wandering the streets.
Well, they're being watched. I think wandering the streets, they are being monitored in most cases. Well, let's bring other people in. I will come. June.
Yeah, well, I'm really surprised, Nick, that you're so passionately against this measure. I would have thought that this would be the sort of thing that you'd be in favour of.
Only if they follow it up, but go back to you.
Yeah, so back to what Karen was saying in terms of the stats. I've got a stat that I'd like to bring up, which is in 2017, there were 30,984 calls made to the counter-terror unit. 21.5% of them actually helped with live investigations. So this stuff works. And also, I've heard you many times on this show be in favour of the Bobby on the beat because of local policing. How is this just not a national version of that?
No, I've clearly not represented myself very well, and I know you want to come back. of course people should phone in with tips.
Okay.
But as and when they go after, these people must get proper terms. They must act. They
So
must,
you're
which
saying,
what didn't happen
so
with the
you're
Parsons Green
saying
bloke.
you agree with it, you're just saying you want to see
But
follow
then here's
through.
the information, which you
Okay.
clearly didn't with Parsons Green.
Nick,
Rachel Johnson.
I think it's, given what we talked about earlier with the new security threat from Russia, I think it actually behoves all of us to be citizen policemen or whatever, anti-terror citizens.
The PREVENT programme doesn't work, clearly.
No, well, wait. Read the Parsons Green bomber. This is what the security minister says. I welcome the conviction of Hassan, who sought to spread terror in this country and murder innocent people. It is clear that there are some lessons to be learned in this particular case. Police and local council have conducted an internal review into how it was handled, and we are working with our partners to review the findings and to interview where further improvements can be made.
To identify where further... That's Ben Wallace.
Ben Wallace from the Home Office. I mean, actually, there was a story this morning where if you do ring 999 to report, you can take from 1 hour to 15 hours.
That was shocking.
15 hours for your
But we
your complaint
forget,
to be handled.
look at initiatives that have been around for many years, like Crime Stoppers, where you can
and how
phone in
effective they've been.
anonymously
Yes.
and report a crime. And that has been seen to be very, very effective
Very
over the years.
effective, yeah.
With the PREVENT strategy, it's a good idea.
It's not working, Karen.
But the reality is so many of the people are radicalised. When they go into prison, they get radicalised.
Even more so.
When they come back, and it's very difficult to de-radicalise somebody who is an IS fanatic, for example. And that's the challenge. It is so difficult to do this. So we need PREVENT, but we also need the ability for people to be able to anonymously, whether it's through Crime Stoppers, whether it's whichever way they do it, but for 999 not to respond for over a day.
I much prefer for you not
ridiculous.
to say not that PREVENT's not working and it's been useless, but actually to encourage communities to call out the people they suspect in their communities, and we know what we're talking about when it comes to Islamic terrorism.
But if a bloke is on his way for an interview to a Home Office official and he says, I've been trained to kill and I'm a fan of IS, and we still don't take action, what is the point of all these initiatives? I agree, Crime Stoppers has been...
one
You can't prove
example
how
to
many
say
stop.
when we've shown that 21.5% have helped inform live investigations? That's one example.
No, hold on, and for the 30 people who were injured and the others who were traumatised, we are so fortunate no one died at Parsons. I'm not withstanding what they went through.
That would have been awful.
And the way he packed it, Michelle, you wanted to come back.
No, I agree with you, but I still don't see the investment. To me, needs to be going into counter-terrorism, into things like PREVENT. It doesn't need to be going into Bobby's on the beat. I think to
It's not just Bobby's on the beat, it is police. The police force is highly under-resourced. You speak to any... I mean, Theresa May was seen to be really tough to be standing up to the police. Now we look back at it and we say, we've been negligent. We need our police force to be invested in terms of numbers, in terms of equipment, in terms of armed officers. We want to feel safe as citizens. We want our police to have that ability to protect us. And they're being cut and cut and cut. And I think that is completely negligent